Honorable friends, I too wish to speak to you today about Bill C-6, an act to amend the Criminal Code conversion therapy. And if you'll allow me, I need to begin, as I so often do, with a story. 2.5 years ago, when I was named to the Senate, I received a phone call from our gentlemanly usher of the Black Rod, Greg Peters, to discuss preparations for my swearing in. Would I like to be sworn in on a Bible, he asked me. When I told him I was not a religious person, he suggested I affirm my oath while holding a copy of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The symbolism seemed perfect, an expression of my commitment as a senator to uphold the rights and freedoms of all Canadians. But a bare scroll, the Black Rod said, might look a bit plain. He suggested the scroll be tied up with a ribbon symbolizing a cause close to my heart. Perhaps a rainbow ribbon, he suggested. Well, I had written many news stories about the hard-won battles for gay rights in this country and in my province. I covered the Doe and Vriend case when the Supreme Court of Canada ruled Alberta must include sexual orientation in its Provincial Human Rights Act. I'd written about the fights waged by same-sex couples to foster children or receive inheritances. I'd covered the fight for gay marriage from the time when it seemed a radical, subversive idea to the point where it became humdrum. I covered Edmonton's first lesbian wedding, with a front row seat, since one of the brides happened to be my own sister-in-law. Well, after the wedding, I guess you'd say both the brides were my sisters-in-law. I wrote about young Albertans fighting to start gay-straight alliances in their schools. I wrote about the fights over funding for life-altering surgery for trans Albertans. But I'm not gay myself. So I was worried about the appearance of appropriating a powerful symbol of the fight for queer and trans rights when that fight was not my own. So I canvassed my gay and lesbian friends and relations. Would they feel offended if I wrapped my charter with a rainbow ribbon? They all told me they'd see the ribbon as a compliment to them and a signal that I would continue to fight for their rights. Only one person questioned my choice, but she happened to be the one whose opinion mattered most, because she's the person I love and respect most in the world, my daughter. "You're not a lesbian," she said. "You're just lesbian adjacent." Oh, she had reason for skepticism and for questioning my sincerity. Because for all my vaunted allyship, when my own daughter came out to me 4 years ago, I did not respond like a perfect mother. And I certainly didn't respond like the woke social justice warrior I fancied myself to be. I didn't disown my daughter. I could no more cut her out of my life than I could cut my heart from my body. I didn't reject her, but I refused to hear her. "Of course you're not gay," I scoff. "You have a membership at Sephora. You have a closet full of dresses. You wear high heels." I simply couldn't accept that my graceful princess, my angel, was a lesbian. Instead of welcoming her brave announcement with joy and excitement, I tried to brush it off. "It's just a phase," I said. "Once you meet the right boy, you'll forget all about this." And then I said a few more unpardonably stupid things straight from the hurtful hetero cliché handbook. Maybe you're just bisexual. Maybe you just think you're gay because you have such cool gay friends. Was it something I did wrong as a mother? Is it my fault? So, why am I sharing this deeply personal story about my greatest parenting failure and perhaps my greatest moral failure? It's because I want all the parents who've been writing to me, who've been filling my inbox with angry, frightened letters about Bill C-6, to understand that I am not lecturing them from some self-righteous posture of moral superiority. I want you to know that I understand that fear and that pain. I understand how the world tilts when your child comes to you with news you were not ready to hear. Even the most loving parents can feel blindsided when their child tells them that they're gay or lesbian or trans. And I understand that denial because I felt it myself, despite all my public advocacy, all my parade going, all my professions of allyship. I had, after all, been one of Edmonton's most outspoken advocates for queer equality. But as my own daughter stood in pain before me, I realized with scalding clarity that as much as I loved my gay friends and family and as hard as I'd fought for them, I'd done so not just out of a sense of justice, but out of pity. I had, at a deep, unacknowledged, and embarrassing level, been thinking of homosexuality or transsexuality as a kind of affliction. I'd fought for gay and trans rights, all right, and not just performatively or hypocritically, at least I hope not. But deep, deep down, I didn't want my daughter, my perfect, perfect daughter, the light of my life, to be one of them. I didn't want her to be a victim of society's prejudice or bigotry. And I suddenly recalled the time the orthodontist told us that my daughter needed braces and an appliance to correct her bite. I was so upset. My daughter? My daughter was perfect and beautiful. She wasn't like one of those kids with the crooked teeth. How could she possibly need braces? Were her orthodontic issues somehow my fault? And then it dawned on me that I was responding to my daughter's news about her sexuality in exactly the same way, as though it somehow reflected badly upon my parenting. I had taken this most intimate announcement about her and her truth and somehow made it all about me. But my daughter did not need to have her sexuality corrected or converted. Oh, we'd straightened her bite with braces and appliances, but there were no tools or tactics to straighten her, nor did there need to be, because her sexuality isn't something for me to accept or tolerate. It's something to celebrate and embrace, because it's part of what makes her the loving, creative, thoughtful person she is. It's part of what makes her a fine writer, part of what inspires her as a law student to fight for justice. And when I think about her wonderful squad of friends who are queer or trans or bi or gender nonconforming or gender fluid, when I think about Basil and Manny and Leo and Sasha and Gina and Kaylee and Blue, I feel so grateful for all they've taught me, and so grateful to them for always having my daughter's back, even when I didn't. In the end, my generous, sardonic daughter gave me her blessing to tie up my charter scroll with a rainbow ribbon. Not so much because I'd earned the right to call myself an ally, but more because that ribbon was a reminder to me of how much more work I needed to do. Just as God gave Noah a rainbow as a sign of his covenant, that rainbow ribbon marked a covenant between my daughter and me, a symbol of the vow I took that day to protect the charter rights of all Canadians. So let me today speak clearly. Conversion therapy is an abusive, medically discredited practice, even when families who force their children into it do so out of what they feel is love, and we need to pass this bill at the earliest opportunity. We need to criminalize this dangerous junk science, quackery, that puts the physical and mental health of vulnerable people at risk. We need to send a clear message to all Canadian parents and their children that gender and sexual identity are not sicknesses to be cured, but part of the glorious human diversity that makes our country and our world a better place. Conversion therapy is a euphemism that occludes ugly truths. There is nothing therapeutic about such coercive re-education. A therapy is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as, quote, a treatment intended to relieve or heal a disorder. But these so-called treatments do nothing to relieve or heal. They instead corrode and undermine a gay or trans person's very sense of identity and teach them to believe they are damaged or deluded, sick or sinful. Now, many of those who've written to us about this bill or who've called me have insisted they're not homophobic or transphobic, but that they're worried the bill infringes on religious freedom or freedom of speech. But my friends, nothing in this bill infringes on the free speech rights of clergy in the pulpit or parents in the kitchen. Nothing prevents them from teaching or preaching that homosexuality is a sin, and nothing in this bill, frankly, prevents parents from rejecting or denouncing their own children. Bill C-6 instead is narrow and specific. It protects vulnerable adults from being forced into sadistic brainwashing. It protects children from being damaged by psychological manipulations that may erode their sense of self. And it protects them from being taken abroad to undergo abusive pseudotherapies in other countries. This bill does not prevent children, teens, or adults from getting counseling, secular or religious, if they are questioning or confused or upset about their sexuality or gender identity. Nor does C-6 somehow enable children who feel they may be trans to immediately access hormone therapy or gender confirmation surgery willy-nilly. And despite what some people seem to believe, the bill does not make it a crime to deny someone top surgery or testosterone either. Instead, C-6 criminalizes coercive and commercial efforts to make people conform, to erase their identity against their will, to poison them with self-loathing. Specifically, Bill C-6 makes it a crime to advertise so-called conversion therapy to would-be customers. It makes it a crime to make money by selling such bogus, unsafe treatments, from aversion therapy to hypnotism to exorcism. That's important because the bill would make it illegal for people who practice this fraudulent therapy from passing themselves off as legitimate psychologists or counselors. Yes, there is a risk that Bill C-6 may simply drive this damaging practice underground. We cannot exorcise homophobia or transphobia any more than a quack therapist can exorcise homosexuality. But we can send a message. When we denounce the commercialization and monetization of homophobia and those who make money by preying on the fears and vulnerabilities of queer Canadians and their families. And we can send a message to every gay, lesbian, bisexual, two-spirited, trans, queer, asexual, gender fluid, gender non-binary, or gender non-conforming person that they are not afflicted, but gifted. Today, I want to publicly apologize to the queerly wonderful members of my own family for my imperfect efforts to be the ally you needed. To Paul and Brian, to Tina and Sandra, to Taylor and Laura, to Peter and Christy and Lisa and Julie and Jason. I love you all so much. Thank you for being such wonderful aunts and uncles when my daughter needed you as role models and mentors, and when I did too. And to my daughter's entire Posse Comitatus, all her amazing friends, thank you for your brilliance and your courage. And to my daughter, you are my inspiration every day. Thank you for your permission to tell your story. And thank you for holding me accountable always. The greatest joy and privilege of my life has been to be your mom. And with you as my daughter, every month is Bride Month. Thank you, merci, and hi hi.